Welcome to My Forever Home, the podcast. I'm Frances Cosway and I've helped hundreds of people create forever homes. I know firsthand how different it is creating a forever home rather than a house you plan to flip in a few years' time. I believe your forever home should reflect what you love and suit your lifestyle rather than being about trends and resale value. You're creating a home for you and your family, not anyone else. So I'm here to help and guide you along the way. I'm going to share all there is to know about creating a quality forever home that's functional, sustainable, future-proof and adaptable to your family's changing needs so it's multi-generational. We don't do cheap and nasty here. We're about creating things to last. It is your forever home after all. I want to help you gain the knowledge you need to be planned and prepared to create the forever home of your dreams. I can't wait to share the journey with you, so let's start. Hello and welcome to this episode of My Forever Home, the podcast. Just for a change, I'm going to be chatting about something totally different than what I normally talk about, but I think it affects our industry. So what I'm going to talk about today is how renovating shows that we're seeing across our screens, across many different stations in Australia, are affecting the build interiors industry, renovating and creating a new home. And look, maybe a little bit controversial today because I'm not all in on these shows. I don't feel that they always have a positive impact on the renovating and new home industry from a build perspective, from a design perspective, from an interiors perspective. Sometimes they can have quite a negative impact. So I'm going to go through a few key points today. So stick with me because I think that having an understanding of, watching these shows can be, let me say it a different way, watching these shows can be quite exciting. It's for example, with the block, the room reveals on Sunday night can be quite exciting to see what they've actually achieved. But behind the scenes in terms of what really happens is not actually very prevalent and it's not always reality. Yes, it's a reality show, but it's not always really showing what goes on. Obviously, these shows are heavily edited, and some of them show a little bit more of the nitty gritty and the hard work that's involved. But a lot of them are brushing over the actual real work that needs to go on to create a really good outcome for a renovation or a new home. One of the biggest things I see is that it has absolutely, without doubt, created a big interest in renovating. And I suppose even further to that, there's a big interest in DIY, in heading down to Bunnings and having a crack and having a go at it yourself. And I think on one hand, that's absolutely awesome for people to have a go, to watch what some people have been doing on these shows and say, hey, I can do that. Particularly when you've got a skill set that, is possibly there for you, but has not been tapped into. And so you're going to have a go. And I think that's awesome for people to be able to explore different ways that they can do things themselves and explore another side of themselves. I think it's fabulous. And of course, it's been wonderful for the industry in that regard as well, in terms of creating a higher demand for DIY, Bunnings and all those sorts of places to be able to do it yourself. So there's definitely been an increase. There's absolutely no doubt about that. And I think particularly during the pandemic, that was even more prolific in terms of, I've got time on my hands, I'm going to do a few things around the house, I'm going to have a go. So, and you certainly couldn't, well, particularly in Victoria and Melbourne, you couldn't actually have trades come into your home. So, it was definitely an opportunity to do that. On the flip side of that, though, sometimes it means that people are having a go from a DIY perspective, and what they're doing may not meet regulations. It may not meet the standards that are required for, let's just think about waterproofing. that perhaps the waterproofing of a wet area is not actually done to the standard that is actually really required. And so sometimes then what's been done from a DIY perspective is not actually of a high enough standard that it's going to last, or it's going to then open up a whole nother heaps of issues when it isn't actually done properly. So you have to have good confidence in your skills, or, there's heaps of YouTube videos on how to do things, but looking at the standards, can I do that? So there's a flip side of this massive interest in the DIY as well. I think one of the biggest problems that I see with the renovating shows is the unrealistic expectations that it puts on pretty much the industry as a whole. So in terms of speed, in terms of what's achievable within a particular budget, in terms of, quality, I'll talk about that separately, but cost, how easy it is to do it. What I see, the impact of these shows is, one, you can do it much faster than what really is possible in reality. Don't forget that behind the scenes, there's a truckload of people that you don't really even see. And the show that actually really comes to mind for me with this is The Block. So you think, oh yeah, that we've just got a couple of, this husband and wife team, and they're managing a couple of trades, but actually behind the scenes, there's a lot more going on with other trades that are coming in that may not actually hit your screen. So in terms of speed, it's near impossible to turn a bathroom around in a week, particularly when you're doing structural things as well. So I think the expectation about what's possible in the amount of time available is really very unrealistic. And then from a cost perspective, it's very unrealistic what they can achieve for the budgets that are put forward on the shows. Now, I can remember last season for The Block, and this is being this is being recorded in September 24, but the last season of The Block, when I was looking at the budgets of doing a kitchen, using the products that they were using for $40,000, some of them were even 25. It is just totally unrealistic. And what's apparent is that, and it's not super clear, but there are masses of sponsors for these shows. And so their products are being provided, and that's how the contestants are able to keep the price down for the spaces that they're doing, but particularly wet areas in kitchens, which are generally the most expensive rooms to renovate, particularly when you're guttering like they are. When the products are being supplied by the sponsors, really high-end products, some of them are, absolutely you can keep your costs down. So what that's doing is it's making people feel that are watching these shows that, I can renovate a kitchen and use some of the high-end products that are being used in those kitchens for $20,000, $30,000, $40,000. And the size of the kitchens is quite large, and then they've got the pantry, and honestly, it is just not realistic. So that becomes really difficult to manage when, people are contacting us and saying, but I've seen it here. Look, I don't really get that a lot, to be honest, that, look, I've seen it on this particular show and they could do a kitchen for $40,000, but they may not be overtly telling me that either, that this is what I think is achievable because I've seen it on a show. But it's absolutely creating, issues in the industry for builders, for designers, and so forth. It's just not possible. And then I covered off the budget, the unrealistic timeframes, that, and if you are going to DIY it yourself and bring in all those trades, some of these things would be possible. But then there's a lot of, labour is one of the biggest components. It's one thing to get high-end products or whatever it is to buy the products that you're wanting to use in these spaces, but it's the labour that is actually one of the biggest components to be able to renovate, the spaces. And there's lots of different trades that come in. It's not just a tiler. It's not just, a cabinet maker. There are a lot of trades that need to come in. So they're the two biggest ones that I see in terms of unrealistic expectations, time and cost involved. The other thing that I'm saying that, look, is the quality concerns. And, obviously they want things to look incredible. So you've got this visual impact. And last year I was able to go on site and actually see the houses of the block. We went into each house. And so what I was seeing on TV on the room reveals, you're not actually seeing all the little details from a quality control perspective. So to be really honest, I was flabbergasted when when I was actually able to go into the houses and see the cutting corners. Just to give you an example, it was like the walls weren't really painted behind the curtains. Some of the detailing and the paint on the cabinetry, that obviously shouldn't have been there. Really little things that you would just never ever see on TV. When you actually go and see them in real life, the quality is just absolutely nowhere near what it should be. The cutting in with the painting, the where things finish. I could see that some of the blinds couldn't even be closed because the blind type wasn't right for the window type, so they weren't ever going to be able to be used. But you don't see that on TV. So I think the quality is absolutely, and I can only talk about this firsthand from what I saw on TV for the block and then what I saw when I actually went to the houses. So I can only talk about that. It may be different in the others. I'm assuming, though, that, when things are done for TV, it's what's visually appealing. What can you visually see on TV? It is very different than what you're seeing in real life. So the other thing is it promotes this, let's just look at the aesthetic of something. Let's look how something's going to be finished. So it promotes all about the looks. And so what I see missed there is what about the functionality? And I suppose that was one of the key things. And again, I'm just going back to what I was saying on the block last year, that in 2023, the Hyatt properties is, it was all about the focus on how it looked. And look, sometimes the judges are looking at functionality as well. But again, you can see what they're showing you on TV, but when you actually go and see it in real life as well, you can really see that the functionality is not always necessarily key. They definitely talked about it on the block last year in terms of what was functional and what wasn't, but they skim over it because, of course, they've got time considerations to think about as well when they're doing a show. So quality is absolutely not as high as what you would be expecting in your own home. And of course, that's time. They don't have the time to be able to create a high quality product because this is being churned out very, very quickly, what can be achieved. And so getting back to the cost misrepresentations as well in terms of budget, it may not be apparent that a lot of the products that are being used, so there's two things here. A lot of the products that are used on these shows are products that the sponsors are supplying. So that affects the budget that is presented on the shows, but also that the contestants need to use the products from the sponsors. So they're using furniture from the sponsors, they're using bench tops and cabinetry from the sponsors. So yes, that's keeping the cost down, but it is also only showing you a particular range from what the sponsors have. So it's not actually showing you all of market or what other products may be able to be used to save money because they're only able to use the products that the sponsors are providing. And that may be only one particular range of a product. So they may not be. So for example, let's look at bench tops. You may only be able to use one particular type of bench top material, let alone from that particular sponsor. So you're not able to use other options for bench tops because that's not what the sponsor has available. So it's only showing you a very restricted solution for what may be possible, particularly what may be possible for a particular budget, because it's heavily skewed towards what the sponsors have available and what sponsors are sponsoring that show at that time, because sponsors change over time too. So again, you're only looking at a very limited product range that's being offered as a solution, but then that obviously impacts the budget as well. So what that product may be, if you're going to use that product in your renovation, is very different than what you're seeing in the show. The other thing that I'm seeing is how it impacts the industry and how it impacts what your expectations are for your renovation is the planning involved. So there'll be, for a show like The Block, and I know I keep coming back to that one, but for a show like The Block, there is truckloads of pre-work that is done. So there's a whole heap of stuff that is done before the contestants even come on site. And there's a whole heap of work that's done, from what I've heard, after the show is done. So after the auction, my understanding is that trades go back in and I think finish off and improve the quality than what you're actually seeing, because these houses are going to be sold. So that's what I've been told. And so, look, there is a whole lot of smokes and mirrors. But what I'm feeling is really missed is, particularly when this is you creating a renovation or a new home, is there's so much planning involved. There's looking at the floor plan, there's looking at the elevations, there's getting the elevations done, there's going to planning, maybe, you have to go to council to get DA. All of that is done on the show. You don't actually ever see that on the show, really. You don't see the drawings. You don't see the elevations. You don't hear about what's been considered. It's just slap, 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 slap. And so the expectation is, well, I can just go in, I've got an empty space, and this is what I'm going to do in a week. There's so much planning involved to get it right. And if you really want to create a home, again, this is a Forever Home podcast. So if you're creating something that is going to last a really long time rather than being flipped, which is what a lot of these shows promote, then there's a lot of planning that is involved in that, in terms of creating a home that is around your lifestyle, your specific requirements, cabinetry that's designed around what you need to store, cabinetry that's designed around how you need to cook and entertain in your space. So that is really skipped in these shows, and that is actually probably the most important part of your renovation or new home, is the planning. The devil is in the detail. And when you skip that detail, not only does it add to mistakes and expensive fixes on site, but you can also miss a trick altogether. You can miss something that is not, that if you don't do the planning, you can miss something completely that you will only realise when you move back into that home. And that is probably one of the most key things that you need to think about, is the planning and the time it takes to plan and get it right, which is what these shows are really missing. And so I think that that's a real shame, because the shows could be actually showing what you could do from a planning perspective. What are the things you need to do at all these different stages? Wouldn't that be awesome to see? Oh, I need to do this. I need to have this. How do I get all my ducks in a row to have a really good outcome on a project? Where these shows are not focusing on that. They're focusing on quick, fast, economical, and there's a lot of corners that are cut. So that for me is a really big one. You know what? I was talking before about how it is definitely promoted, these shows is definitely promoted an increase in renovations. And apparently it now accounts for almost $60 billion a year in Australia. So they've actually contributed to the growth of the renovation industry, and overall the renovation industry in Australia is sitting at around 60 billion a year. So we're talking big money. And that 60 billion is not because of the shows, that's just the industry overall. But I don't know what the figure is for how the shows have contributed to the industry. I'm not sure whether that's measurable or not. People are not going in and saying, oh, it's because of this show that I'm doing this now. But also renovation, and this is a bit of a side topic, as this is not about how the shows are affecting the industry, but because of cost of living pressures at the moment, that is absolutely increasing the amount of people that want to do DIY to save money. But also, rather than moving and paying stamp duty, particularly when stamp duty in Victoria in particular is so high, that they go, okay, well, let me renovate. If I love my area and, there's, in essence, I love what my house is, I just need to be able to renovate, then people are actually choosing to do that rather than actually moving, because it's got a better cost advantage in a lot of in a lot of instances. Now, the other thing about these shows and how they're affecting the industry is there's not a lot of promotion of sustainability. Look, they talk about it superficially. I think that they talk about it superficially. Oh, we've got solar panels on the roofs and so forth. But I feel that that's superficial. They're not talking or addressing the waste. They're not redoing, these houses are effectively, I mean, if you think about it, there's hardly any original walls left in the houses that they're renovating. So it's effectively a new house, a knockdown rebuild. They're just not knocking it over completely. That's certainly what I was seeing with the Hyatt homes, what's happening on Phillip Island in 2024. But they're, having to redo work because the work has been done so quickly that that work has to be redone. That's not a sustainable outcome. What are they doing with their waste? What are they recycling? What are they repurposing? Pretty much from I'm seeing nothing. It's just a direct demolish, rebuild, or demolish certain parts of the house and redo those parts. Truckloads of waste, and really just a nod to sustainability rather than, I would use the word that it's a lip service to sustainability rather than building homes that are, passive solar or using sustainable materials. I know some of the materials that are going in are gold star accredited from Green Tag, but there is so much waste, and we're not seeing people. And I'm talking about the block here because I know other shows they are repurposing and they are reusing. Renovation Australia, there's been a lot of houses on that show where they have gone above and beyond to recycle and reuse, which is absolutely brilliant. So in that aspect, those shows, Renovation Australia in particular, a lot of the people on there are wanting to repurpose, reuse, not knock down. They want to be able to embrace what they have. And from a sustainability perspective, that's a great story. But when I'm looking at shows like The Block, where it's quick, it's fast, it's get in, get out, make it look good, but not focus on quality, it has to be redone, they're not good sustainable stories. So on one hand, we've got shows that are really promoting it and people can see, wow, I can actually redo that. And people are so passionate. I can distinctly remember one, it was a really old original house from, I don't know, it was nearly 200 years old in South Australia. And honestly, it was just so beyond repair. And it was just a labour of love in terms of the horsehair plaster that they were using, it was such a labour of love, what they were doing to restore that house back to what it was like in the late 1800s. It was just incredible, lathe plaster. So, it depends on the show that you're watching in terms of what sustainable story they're promoting. I really don't feel on The Block that they are. And that's probably one of the most popular ones that we have. There's a lot of, soap opera and all that sort of stuff going on in that show too. And that's really what the focus is. And a bit of lip service around sustainability, but not a lot of others. So I think it's about choosing which show is going to really show you what's achievable from a sustainability perspective. Ones that are coming out of the UK are also great. So when you look at shows like Grand Designs, the one out of the UK more with Kevin McLeod is a lot more focused on sustainability, a lot more focus on what can be achieved from a recycling, repurposing, building to passive house standards. That's definitely a key focus over there because they are so much more advanced than what we are. Grand Designs in Australia, look, sometimes they do. It's nowhere near as advanced from a sustainability perspective as what the one out of the UK is showcasing. One in New Zealand's not bad either, the Grand Designs New Zealand. But, if you really want to be able to see what's achievable by watching a show from a sustainability perspective, choose your shows mindfully. And I would definitely be looking at ones that are coming out of Europe because they are really showing they're well ahead of what we're able to do or what we are doing because the appetite over there is much bigger. and they are more advanced. So have a look at those shows and get inspired by what you can do from a sustainability perspective. And these quick flip shows, they're the ones that are not really focusing on sustainability. So from an educational perspective, yes, just as I was saying, they can absolutely educate you around sustainability. They can educate you around new materials. They can educate you around, what's achievable. Some of them will show you what's achievable with less money than others. Some of them, like Grand Designs, we're talking big budgets in a lot of those shows, big budgets. It can also show you what some of the pitfalls are. So you can look at these shows, if you're looking at Grand Designs and thinking, oh my goodness me, there are absolutely some issues that can come up. Being prepared for some of the pitfalls and some of the things that you never expect are going to happen on a site, they can happen, and it's life. So they can definitely show you that it's not always a bed of roses when you're renovating or building. So preparing you for what may happen. But again, it comes back to the planning and having contingency and what if this happens, and let's be as planned as we possibly can. You cannot always know. One of our clients has come up against quite a few issues on their block. The sewerage is not at the right level, so it had to go back to the architect through build phase to change it so that they could actually get the sewerage right. It was not foreseeable, and there are a lot of things that are not foreseeable, particularly with renos. Once you start getting into the makeup of the house and the structure of the house, you can't see what's behind the walls. You don't know what the wiring's like. You don't know what's behind there that you need to allow for. So, renovating shows how they affecting your renovation or new build. They can help you think about, this is not always going to be an incredible journey, but we need to plan. You can see some of the pitfalls that can happen. So look, I think it's just being, realistic about, and these shows can help you be a bit realistic that it's not always going to be, things are not always going to go according to plan. If you look at Grand Designs, I think just about every show, and I'm thinking about Kevin McLeod, that it's not, I think just about every house that he's been on, there's always been some sort of issue. And then it's how they've overcome it. That's great. And so, there's educational purposes, which I think is fabulous. Even things like understanding what the nationwide house energy rating scheme is and how it impacts. It's a NAITHA's rating, which, we're all moving to 7 stars in Australia, up from 6. Understanding what that means, understanding what some of the terminology is that you may not be familiar with. So there's definitely a really good educational component there as well. It's just working out which shows are going to give you a bit more of a well-rounded education rather than just a flip to sell education, which I feel is where there's a lot of cutting corners and so forth in that. So quite a few points there, some really, really good things to think about, or that you're going to get out of these shows if you're renovating or building, depending on the show you're going to choose. And then on the flip side, there's definitely expectations around lots of different things that really puts the industry under a lot of strain, because people then have an expectation that they're going to be able to achieve what happens on these shows when it's actually not reality at all, even though it's quite funny they're called reality TV shows. So anyway, that's what my thoughts are on how these renovating shows are impacting our industry, how they affect the industry, and how they affect the people in those industries. Your designers, your interior designers, and your builders. And we come up against this, but I saw this here, and it's like, yes, but that's not life. That's not reality. So use them to help you, and there's definitely ways that they can, as I've already outlined, and be a little bit more mindful with some of the others and how they're not necessarily very accurate about what really, really goes on. And just don't forget that planning is often the stuff that's not shown. On Grand Designs, I show bits of the planning, but it's the planning that is the time-consuming part, and the detail is in the planning, and that often will dictate whether your project is going to end up being a bit of a nightmare or not, and that there are always going to be things that you may not have thought would happen, that you may not have planned for, that no one could have foreseen, that just happen because that's just what happens. Anyway, hope you found that a little bit interesting. It's been something that's been on my mind for a long, long time, and I thought, no, I'm going to talk about it on the show and give you my thoughts on how I think these renovating shows are affecting the industry. Have a great week, and have a great weekend, because it will be the end of the week. And don't forget about the magazine that you can grab. That'll give you lots of, the digital magazine that we've created, that'll give you lots of insight. So that's always in the show notes for you to be able to download. Have a great week, everyone. Bye for now. If you're ready to renovate or build your forever home, you're in the right place. Here are some ways to gain further inspiration or how we can work together. Book a chat with me so we can discuss your project in more detail and see how we may be able to assist you with one of our fixed price packages. You can book a chat with me directly at whitepebbleinteriors.com.au/chat. If you're after some peace of mind that your floor plan is as good as it can be, for a small investment, a floor plan sanity check could be just what you need. I review your plans as that second set of professional eyes, ensuring it's functional, flexible, and future-proof for lasting peace of mind. This can save you thousands in structural changes down the track. You can find out more and book directly at whitepebbleinteriors.com.au. And if you'd like to get your hands on some reading material, unlock your dream home and dive into our first ever magazine, Creating Your Forever Home. It's packed with expert insights, stunning visuals, and practical advice on building your forever home. Grab your copy and be inspired now. You can also access the first 3 chapters of my book, Your Forever Home, a practical and helpful guide to gain insights on how to create a home that will suit your needs for the long term. Everything is available at whitepebbleinteriors.com.au/links. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of My Forever Home. If you loved it, please leave a review, share it on Facebook and Instagram for your friends, and be sure to sign up to our newsletter for more insights on creating the forever home of your dreams. If you're really ready to get started, you can book a chat with me via the website whitepebbleinteriors.com.au, or check out our online courses designed to provide a clear framework for you at myforeverhome.com. If you've got a question, be sure to get in touch at podcast@myforeverhome.com. Have a great day.